the future CEO in a lot of industries needs to have transformational skills. He needs to have product skills, but he needs to have tech skills as well.
Welcome to the latest episode of Tech.Rulez.Period. My guest today says, change is here to stay and it continuously accelerates. Welcome, Markus, the Group CIDO of ISS. Thanks for joining in.
It's a pleasure.
You are the CDO of ISS Group and you have been with DB Schenker Group for 30 years. One of the key theses that we have in Tech.Rulez.Period is that technology is actually bigger than what we normally refer to as information technology, because it's all over in the enterprise. With your 30 years of experience in that capability area, I would say, what is your key takeaway and what is your learning of how that has developed?
So I would say, looking back in the time, I think the problems have changed massively. If I remember my first 10 years in tech, we had real tech problems. You know, that was all about, do I get the performance right? Can I deal with the volumes? And I can tell you the last 15 years, I don't remember any project where I had a real tech issue in the end. Yeah. So the whole tech domain and leadership moved much more from a pure technical knowledge, which you still need, absolutely, and that's your bread and butter business. It moved into a transformational setup, which includes tech, but it includes processes, it includes change management, and in the end, tech these days, and as a CIO, tech is kind of like an enterprise in the enterprise. So it's much more holistic, what we do these days. And exactly as you said, you know, these days, historically, tech came out of the kind of accounting department. That's why still a lot of CIOs report to CFOs, which makes less sense from my perspective. But now it's everywhere. And if you include the mathematics, the algorithmics, and ultimately neural networks, it's going to be dramatical, you know. And so I believe that even now with ChatGPT, I think everybody, really everybody is aware that something big is happening. You know, some people compare that with the, you know, like the humans found the fire. Yeah. You know, it's so dramatically that it has to be on the agenda of every board in every business to deal with that. And that's for sure much more than tech. You know, it is really about what does that mean to the business models, the approaches, and it's from the how do I approach sale, how do I manage my logistics, how do I manage overall my resources. So it's quite a big scope, and for sure this can't be run out of a tech department. That's impossible.
I like your expression, the humans found the fire sort of thing. And you mentioned also ChatGPT. As one technology or one innovation that we have lately seen. How do you train or manage your organization to be on top of these basically ever-changing daily innovation that are coming out? Do you have any philosophy of how you deal with that change?
I think I have an advantage because if you look what I did in the 30 years, I was 17 years at Mercedes and I always in tech and we always had changing scope. Every 2 years I got the job enrichment and it was, I had the ability to learn. Then the 5.5 years at Deutsche Bank, that was a turnaround and I built a team again from scratch. In the end, I started as a single transformation manager and I ended up as a CIO for group finance with 600 people and a muscle who ultimately enabled Deutsche Bank in that area of closing the books and records and managing liquidity and the capital ratios in that very demanding time in banking between 2010 and 15. At Schenker, I joined in the board level. And again, I had the chance, because it was very clear we need to reposition the company in the digital game against the startups and all, the hype, what is coming in logistics. And again, I had the chance to build a new function and further develop it. In the end, we had 3 tech centers, 900 people additionally in tech centers, 500 in China. Now it's already 500 in Poland as well, 150 in India. So and we insource tech as well. And the same in the end happens now at ISS. So when I started, we had 630 people across the globe working in tech, very kind of separate units in the local entities for themselves, tried their best, but it was never played like a tech family globally. So 630. End of this year, we will be 1,000. So answering a long answer to your question, but you can imagine if you add 50% of capability to your team, it's a different team. And it starts from the top, and it starts with the leadership you set up, and then you can build muscles the company never had. And that's when you talk about algorithmics mathematics, we grow this. We have now, really data analysts, senior data analysts. When I joined ISS, I didn't find any programmer. So I think that's how I had the pleasure, because I really love to develop teams and develop a muscle which is not there. I think that's much more difficult if you are 20 years CIO of one company you're in your own kind of, cook in your own soup. And then to transform an existing organization where you already have been responsible. That's more difficult. That's why I believe there are managers which are more qualified for transforming. And there are very good managers who are good in running a status quo. And I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just different. And that's how I do it. And that's a pleasure. I got the support from the board to really do that, because you need to bear in mind, if you come to the board of directors and you say, I'm going to recruit another 400 people, you can imagine, especially in German companies, headcount is an issue. It was not. They bought into it, and I didn't even increase the budget because I had so much abilities to cut costs in other areas and insource skills. So the CFO likes it. For him, no hit on the P&L, but it's for sure a totally different function already now after 2 years. And suddenly we build already 6 applications. People can touch it, feel it, see the change. And it's a repositioning of the company. But the knowledge, I must say, I never had the big need in the last, let's say, 15 years to retrain existing stuff. I think that's as well in a lot of areas a little bit a myth. Because a lot of IT departments are so massively outsourced that you can turn around by adding skills, and the others will join and go with you on the journey. That's, I think, the concept which worked for me. And it always starts with the leaders.
And you mentioned a lot of time people, and I see that actually very enthusiastically, how you say, like, I'm building up 500,000 people now in ISS, or about to be 1,000 people. And I also looked on your web presence. Basically, there is a lot about taking care of people, giving forums to listen in, to collaborate. Can you shed some light on your philosophy? And you also said leaders are important. Can you share your view on how to lead and how to engage with your employees? Because that's certainly about trust. Otherwise, you can't build up such a big scale.
Firstly, what I think is very important, you need to be a very humbled and authentic person. And I don't think you can play this. Either you are or you are not. So, and that comes from different backgrounds. How have you socialized yourself? How have you grown up in your family? What kind of sports you did? How have you socialized you as a person? And then I think for leaders, it's just to be aware of that you don't give room to your ego. I just think in boards still this time, what is in the way of good collaboration is egos, And if you as a leader can take out your ego because it's not worth it, then I think you have, programmed yourself in a way that people don't build walls between you as a leader and them. Because tech leadership, which I think is really not an easy, way of doing things. It's an art, because you can't read the code yourself. I can't read the code myself anymore. So you need to trust people, and people will only tell you problems when they trust you. And that means you need to be humbled. Yeah, you need to open up to people that they, have the guts to tell you, hey, Markus, it's a good idea, but I think this is the better way. And bear in mind, if you're a board member, it's very difficult to be sure that people tell you what they really think. Yeah. So that's the one thing. So you need to be a trustful person, and that's only possible if you open up, and then people will follow you anyway. And that's the key, I would say, that the key skill. What I would add to it in the end is you have to have a very solid strategy. So, because what people need is clarity where we go. And especially if you run a very decentralized organizations like we are, where you have people, tech people around the globe, they need to know where to go when they make decisions on a daily basis. So that's why you need a strategy. The strategy only, makes sense if it's built as a team, including the people of the regions, including your leadership team, that they really own it. Otherwise, if you just call in a consultant, they build a strategy, then you will have 400 PowerPoints, but the team will not own it. So they need to own it. They need to be part of that. And the third one, coming back what you talked about, the presence I do and why I'm doing a lot on LinkedIn, it's about injecting energy. So what people, when you spend your life, the only thing which you can't prolong is time. And you want to spend your time in a positive energy environment, because that gives you energy, that makes fun in life. Yeah. And I think this is one of the key role of a leader in the right strategy, the right people, and then injecting positive energy into the organization. That's the kind of 3 minimum skills a top leader needs to bring to the equation to become a good leader. And that generates followship, and what I do then is the kind of normal formats, which are not rocket science. I just do jump level meetings. I do now a new format, which I call coffee chat. Again, nothing new, but we randomly collect 10 people. They get an invitation, and then we talk. Yeah. And for them, they first think, oh, why do a board member? Why does he want to talk to me? So there is for sure some resistance. But they love it afterwards, and you can imagine that this generates loyalty to the company, because the message for them is, hey, they really take me serious. Yeah. And for me, it's kind of a chance to hear the truth as well. Okay. And I think if you do that in a proper way, and it just needs to be honest. If it's not honest, people will feel. People watch you as a leader. What do you do? What do you wear? What do you eat? You are leading just with your presence. And if this is not sound and not authentic, we are recruiting clever people.
Injecting energy, I like that. And you actually do that on board level in ISS, but you also did that at DB Schenker on board level. There is one other hypothesis or thesis that we have in Tech.Rulez.Period, which basically says tech stewardship, how we call it, needs to be on board level, because tech is all over the enterprise. And it's not only in an IT function. I know, especially, and that's how I got to know your profile, basically, is that in DB Schenker, you even developed from IT into or onto board level, which I think is a key success factor to bring technology on that level, so that everybody is sort of educated what you can do with it and how innovation can be put into. Your lessons learned maybe for other CDOs or CIOs that want to become a CIDO. How did you approach it, and what's maybe your success formula?
So the story around Schenker was that I was recruited as a board member CIO. Yeah. And then, I, having been in my first 100 days, I looked on different things like the platforms we had, the web appearance, and I just said to my colleagues on the board, look, this is just not good enough, So the marketing we do digitally, it was just not good enough. And then the board, the CEO asked me, Markus, do you want to, take care about that? And I said, look, I can't take care about that, but then I want the official assignment from the board of directors that I should do that as a CDO, because then I would build new departments with totally different assignments than programming software, because that's the difference between a CIO and a CDO. It's about business models. It's about functional stuff far more than really tech stuff only. So very different. So that was agreed. And I said to them, look, I don't need much, any budget, because I can save somewhere else and I can build that. And then the supervisory board gave me this additional assignment to be the CDO in addition to the CIO. And I built 3 new departments. One was about mathematics and algorithmics. One was about innovation management and startup management. And the third one was about booking platforms, like you may remember, we built Connect to Schenker, so real online booking platforms, tracking and tracing, and all this kind of software as a service models in the end. So the point is, for a CIO, if you want to move into repositioning the function, the most important thing is that you really need the interest in the business itself. You need you need to understand the business content. You need to understand what drives the business. You need to have an opinion about that, because digitization in the end is a team play. If you're the CCO of a company, you can't do it yourself. You need tech these days if you're in B2C anyway, right? It's all about mathematics and influencer marketing. That's all data, and if you don't understand mathematics and algorithmics and what data can give you, you can't be a good CCO in this kind of industry. B2C especially, very important. You have to be the team play, and Schenker, it was already as the CIO on the board, but the CDO was missing. And I think the worst thing, for my personal opinion, is to have a CIO and the CDO. 2 roles.
In two different people.
A lot of companies have that, but they top on each other's toes anyway. Either you have the wrong CIO, but that doesn't work from my perspective. You should have one who combines that, because the CDO needs the power of the tech in the background. Otherwise, he can't build software as a service models, as new business models, or mathematics and algorithmics, because he needs to be part of the ecosystem of components, which the CIO more or less needs to build by integrate. So that was important. When I look at ISS, the job was totally new generated. And why was it new generated? There was never on the board of this 350,000 people company, there was no tech. And the board of directors assigned in 2020 a new CEO, and he was coming from the banking industry. So they really made a decision, I take a new CEO with a totally different flavor. And for sure, and he looked at it and said, where is my CIO? So I think that's how the position was established. And then I was joining it because they made a strategy and said, we want to become tech leader in this industry. And that's quite a bold step, right? From being a non-tech available thing with decentralized legal entities, very independent in the countries, to start to build one ISS in a transnational setup with a central tech muscle, and then start to scale a business which is very, very people-driven. So I think, as you asked the question, yes, every board needs technology competence. And for sure, if you're an engineering-driven company, you might have a head of engineering, like a car manufacturer. I still think you need a CIO as a colleague, because a CIO is like a nerve system of the overall enterprise. It's not only the software in the car, it's the software around the car, the software in the process, and the software in the enterprise. It only works, after 30 years, it only works if the CEO ultimately has an understanding about tech, And I think when I talk to a lot of people these days, the future CEO in a lot of industries needs to have transformational skills. He needs to have product skills, but he needs to have tech skills as well. Tech management. I think for young people, if they listen in here, I think, in your career, to go for a phase through a tech part of your development enables you long-term to go up the ladder, because it qualifies you to deal with complexity. And as you said, tech is everywhere. So I think it's quite hard as a CIO if the CEO is not at all tech savvy, or just has even hesitate and for because then you are only too expensive for the CEO or the CFO. If he doesn't understand what he can do with this, and that's still a reality these days. We still have CEOs which are not really, and I'm not talking about digital natives, I talk about really understand what you can do with the tech. and what you need to do with the tech in your industry.
Tech is everywhere. I like that as a closing sort of statement. But we have also learned dealing with technology is like humankind finding the fire on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, success comes from putting energy into people. I also like that as a key statement. Markus, I'm very delighted to have you here today, or had you here today. And thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.
Cheers.